Well, this is rather nice, isn't it? It's like looking at a CCTV of us. A bit of Arsenal in the background. I'm rather loving that. But it's the cabinet, Chris, that we're looking at, isn't it? This rather whacking Great Johnston.
Well, I did promise you an enormous chest full of Johnston, and here it is. This is a set of typeface blocks for printing Johnston typeface, because this week we're all about signs.
It was a cheeky bit of Johnston, wasn't it? Welcome to Series 3, Episode 3 of the Hidden London Hangouts. My name's Alex. Hello, how are you? How is lockdown treating you? It's wearing me out a little bit, as you can tell. But we're going to do something really cool. They're made of tin, enamel. They go ding, ding, ding when you touch them, and they show us the way. Signs. We're going to get loads of signs. We could even be like Britney Spears. Give me a sign. I don't do this alone. I've got three amazing people from the London Transport Museum to guide us through this amazing subject, to make us laugh as well and divert our attention away from the madness of life. First of all, Chris Nix, hello.
Hi, Alex. Well, Fred, it was time to ditch the suits this week because there could only be one sartorial choice for this episode, and indeed only one mug choice, with letter S for the second week running.
I love it. And a T-shirt full of them as well. Siddy Holloway looking glorious in her library today.
In my library. You know, you said Britney Spears for signs. I funnily have had Beyonce's signs playing in my head all day, you know, where she talks about the different astrology signs. But happy to be covering the subject.
It's going to be great. And Laura Hilton Brown, I mean, you are our princess of posters, but I don't know, maybe I can attract you to a little bit of ding, ding, ding on the tin.
I did wonder where you were going with the ding, ding, ding then before. And then I thought, oh no, yeah, on the sign. I get this. Yeah, we're back. It's crazy that we're in season 3 and we're episode 3 already. Time is flying, even though it's still crazy lockdown 3.0. But yeah, I'm looking forward to today.
Totally glorious stuff. Well, as I say, we're talking about signs. We're not going to waste any time chatting about them. We've got pictures of the most amazing stuff. So we're going to spend a lot of time in the depot today, either in person or looking at stuff that's already there. And Chris, some of the most amazing signs date back till goodness knows when.
Absolutely right. The earlier signs in our collection are, well, yeah, I mean, they can be as simple as a wooden sign, but probably the best ones to start with for our purposes today are these rather lovely metal and enamel ones in our collection. And these date from the period in the Edwardian expansion of the tube from 1906. And here we can see one for the Great Northern, Piccadilly and Brompton Railway. We've referenced that a few times in different episodes. Here's another one from the Bakerloo line, and you can see it's got these lovely interlaced double O's at the end, and the word tube barely surviving in the bottom right-hand side here. And these, you can see they're not the colours that we might expect for the lines as we know them today. You might expect the Bakerloo line to be brown, but of course back then it didn't have that colour association. And if we look at this one, the Piccadilly line tube, very functional. You'll see examples of this on the front of Leslie Green station facades in many of the black and white photos that we have. And you can see it's really, really functional, just says Piccadilly Tube. And these all span from that era of 1906 to 1907, when really there were just too many styles and each of the individual lines was finding their own way with their own identity.
And also, you're going to say, I presume, that this was around the time when different companies were doing their own thing. And last week you mentioned the Metropolitan line had like a diamond design. Have you got any examples of that?
Yeah, we do. I'm just going to quickly show you this other example of once you were inside the station of the kind of one of the other ways of doing signage, which was to fire it into the tile work that was going to be on the walls in either the ticket hall, the passageways, or on the platforms. So variety of medium used to create signage. But yeah, once you got down to platform level, you'd be looking for the station name. And this is a very early example of how a station name could be made to stand out more by putting it on a shaped background. This one, wow. This one from Shoreditch. And Metropolitan line, as we've talked about before, tends to like to do its own thing. So here it's used a red diamond pattern for the background of CROXLEY Green's station name there.
That's kind of what we were talking about last week with Lords, right? In that, you remember,
right, yeah.
It just had the platform image with all the advertising, and the only spot vacant on the platform for the station name was on the bench of all places. So it kind of, you know, it enhances the fact that they really needed to start trying to grab the passengers' attention, and that's basically what they came up with. It's interesting that, you know, it's basically sort of like a roundel, but not really, seeing as the Metropolitan was always a separate company until 1933. They're sort of like kind of apart, but not quite. It's very interesting.
It was like
going
a
for
sort
the
of
same
like
logic, though, to make it stand out. And
Yeah.
just to give you an idea as to how variable these were, they couldn't even decide on what size of diamond to sit it on. So that Lord sign that we talked about last week sat on a much bigger diamond than you see here, where you can barely notice it.
It's interesting though, Laura. What do you reckon? The diamonds or the circles? For me, it's got to be the circles.
Yeah, I think I probably agree, actually. Do you know, I was just sitting here thinking as well, like, you can take what you want from these signs, can't you? Because signs have a basic core function of wayfinding, navigation, familiarity, and kind of identification as well. But, you know, as a passenger, I was just thinking, as a passenger, what do you want from a system of signs? And I guess it's like a quick and easy identification of where you want to go. So therefore, a successful navigation of a journey. But I think what we're starting to see here already with these signs is that, you know, London Underground and Transport for London, it collectively represents like a city and a company and a transport network. And to some people, it might just be, I'm getting from A to B. It's a lovely sign. But we're already, this is great that we're getting into this already. We're already starting to unpick kind of how there are going to be these hidden design gems throughout all of these signs and how it develops and grows. So I have no idea if that answered your question. Did I say diamonds or circles? I can't remember now.
I think you probably like both of them, but I think both, we're all going to love the roundy ones, aren't we? And it's funny because we're in the process of trying to explain how it all came about. So we need to have a think about how the roundel evolved. And before lockdown, do you remember when we could travel? Feels like so long ago. We went to the depot to have a look at how these things came about.
So this mixture of signs is probably where the roundel began, wasn't it? Because up until then, there was this simple set of signage and a finger.
Mm-hmm. So we all know sort of the arrows of the Underground, and particularly the different iterations of the arrow. But before that, you just had this kind of finger with a beautiful kind of cuff link to it as well. And these would have been the only signs to tell you which way was out. And often people would actually miss them. So later on, they put some of these signs onto these massive red discs in order to kind of attract attention, and particularly with the station names, and then started adding them onto different parts of the network.
And these are what became known as the bullseye. We talk about them as roundels today, but they were originally called bullseye. And to look at them, you can see the proportions don't look quite as we're used to them today.
And it's got wood.
Yeah.
It does, yeah. So it's a wooden frame on a metal disc. Today, you know, we try and avoid using wood on the Underground as it can combust. But yeah, there you go. That's the origin of your bullseye roundel right there.
And then, of course, Edward Johnston came along in 1916, and he standardised the roundel, and he also created the Johnston typeface, which we should go and have a look at now.
Let's do it.
Something for everybody, isn't there, in these? That was pretty cool. I do like going around that little depot area with all the signs. Chris, it's such a great area of your depot.
It is lovely. The sign store is kind of a guilty pleasure to go and have a look around there every now and again. I think those that early period of Edwardian Tube was really kind of wild west of design, because these were, remember, they were originally rival railway companies, all trying to, you know, shout as loudly as they could and create an impression. Well, that in the very early years, it became apparent there were just far too many styles and designs, and so by 1908 there was an attempt in the Underground grouping to try and rationalize some of that design, and that's where some of the early foundations of good design begin. and springboard, as Siddy mentioned in the film there, towards 1916, when Edward Johnston is brought in to try and design things properly.
Wow. Well, it's beautiful. As I say, what's lovely is we go from that very basic roundel with the wood and all that thing, and to what we're going to get next. And there's one particular image that is on the front of books and all sorts of things. And I think it's one of the most stunning bits of artwork and graphic design from so long ago. And there's one, and I know what's coming next. Next. It's going to be amazing. But talk us through what we can see.
Well, Siddy, you led off with Johnston. Do you want to just mention this?
Yeah, so we've talked about this before in our Johnston episode. So if you haven't watched that, do go back and watch that from series 2. But this is basically the Johnston alphabet as it's being kind of designed and worked out. We've talked before about the W being a bit different. So you see an interlinked W there, but you also see one that is not interlinked. So it's just starting to develop the typeface that we now know and very much love. And in addition to making the typeface, Edward Johnston was also asked to kind of standardize and design the roundel to be kind of a recognizable feature of the tube itself. And the image that Alex was talking about is probably the next one, I'm going to guess.
It is.
Everybody, that's it. Gotcha.
And
look at that.
What you can see here is the units being set out in that diagram. So the fact that that typeface is now so tidily designed allows for these mathematical proportions to be laid down, and it's that creates an internationally recognized and protected piece of intellectual property, the bullseye roundel.
Yeah, I mean, it's so completely unanimous with the City of London. We've talked about this before, but, you know, you cannot see that without thinking immediately of London. And, you know, it's something that we've talked about before in that, you know, it's protected. So you cannot use it without potentially getting a lawsuit or at least a cease and desist letter from TfL Legal, because it is, as we said, a protected copyrighted mark. And, you know, no matter where you were, if you were, you know, in Iceland, as I have been and seen that, or somewhere else entirely, as we'll probably see a little bit later on, you know, it is synonymous with the city and one of the most recognized symbols in the world.
Beautiful. I just love it. I really, really, really love that image. It's so beautiful. I love the handwriting. I love the precision of I mean, even the color of the paint, the way it just finishes at the bottom there. It's just lovely, and it's no wonder it's been used everywhere. It's a totally iconic bit of well, graphic design lore, isn't it?
I was just thinking, hasn't Mr. Nick's got a T-shirt of this as well?
I do. That was my sartorial choice for the day, was to wear the T-shirt which bears a lot of these different variants of the roundel on them, including a few which I think we made up down at the bottom just to kind of fill it out. But yeah, it is such a recognisable thing. And but once other modes of transport came to the family of London Transport, when that was formed in 1933, they too adopted it. And if we just move on, this one for you, Laura, because I know it's close to somewhere close to your heart. The Tramways adopted it when they became part of London Transport. And here you can see this is an engineering drawing defining how you must do tramway signage.
It's lovely. Just to let you know, by the way, for the Patreon edition of this episode, Chris will take his shirt off and change it for the other T-shirt, just to give you an idea of what you might or might not get if you subscribe to Patreon. I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, I reckon we need to go back to the Museum Depot for a little more of an education.
Right. Here we start seeing some Johnston.
And this is great. And this is more familiar, isn't it, really?
It is, because by this point the proportions are mathematically defined. You can lay out one of these bullseyes with that typeface on it, knowing that the typeface is designed proportionally to fit within the mathematical rules of the shape of the roundel.
And you always recognise that the O's are a perfect circle.
Yeah.
So on all Johnston fonts, you've got typeface.
Beautiful. How do you say that, by the way, Chris?
Herban.
Holborn, excellent. Do we all agree on this one?
Holborn, yeah, I would say
Holborn, all right?
Holborn.
There's no
Holborn.
in Holborn.
Exactly. So,
What's really cool here though is that it says in brackets Kingsway, which of course we will be talking about in a different episode, so stay tuned for that. But down here we do have another disused station. Do you recognise that one, Alex?
St John's Wood Road. Now that would have been called Lords.
Very good knowledge. Very good knowledge. It wasn't called that for very long.
Yeah.
No.
Changed its name to Lords very quickly and then got closed.
And the typeface is wrong, so this is obviously pre-Johnston.
Pre-Johnston, yeah,
Right,
absolutely.
yeah.
And I believe this was rescued being used as a panel in an old railside fence.
Love it. I love it.
And then we've got Trafalgar Square, just the other side of Charing Cross Station, as we talked about in episode 2 of the Hidden London Hangouts, the first season. Trafalgar Square was a station on the Bakerloo line before the two merged together with the Jubilee line in 1979.
So basically, Trafalgar Square is the Bakerloo line bit of Charing Cross.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Lots of stuff there, guys. I mean, we have covered some of these already. As you may have realised, this was shot before lockdown when we were all allowed to gather and do some stuff. So we have obviously we have covered Kingsway already. We've also covered Trafalgar Square. So if you haven't seen those episodes, do go back a few episodes and catch those because they were quite lovely, I would say. But what did you think of that, Alex?
You know, I loved it. It reminded me how long ago we were allowed out to play, but the fact we've almost created a whole new series in the time since we filmed that, just because of the monstrous COVID. But I also love the fact that in that one shot we had the original sign from Lords that we talked about last week. We had those amazing roundels from Kingsway, Holborn Kingsway. And then there was also Trafalgar Square. So it was like that was a treasure trove of London Underground history in one shot that we managed to get. And of course, it's all at the depot for when it's open up again. You can go and see it for yourself. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Laura, just lovely. And you've even got a little bit of Holborn, not quite Aldwych, but near enough.
I know, it's like you guys preempted the Holborn debate, which was quite cool. I was just thinking as well that isn't it phenomenal that a transport symbol has become a cultural icon? Like that's a big deal, right?
Totally, absolutely. And one of the things that always impressed me, especially when we see them now, is they all look so shiny and beautiful and precise as well. There's never an inaccuracy in them, is there? Never. Well, we were interested to know how they're made, and they're actually made on the Isle of Wight. And so we sent the team from the London Transport Museum down to have a look at the screen printers.
I put together all the components that make up what we need for enamel. Main component is glass, or at least we call it frit, which is a synthetic glass, and clay, quartz, and a number of other components to give it suspension and thickness. And if we haven't got the exact colour that you're looking for, it would be my job to put together pigments to try and reach the colour that you're looking for. I'm conscious of the responsibility of achieving that for that person. We muck in as a team.
I'll get the screens from the screen department and I'll set it up on the bench here and get the panels from downstairs, the enamel panels, set it up, and then by applying the ink through the screen we end up with the roundels. The line diagrams are a favourite of mine. A busy line diagram would take somewhere between 8 and 10 hours. Go to London quite a bit and there it's like a bit of a busman's holiday for me. Walk on the underground, seeing all the signs we produce here, up there.
We make a huge variety of signs for London Underground, right from our little SID plates, which are the station identification plates, very small rectangular size, right up to huge roundels.
No one would expect the Isle of Wight to be mentioned in being involved in the Underground, but yeah, there's a large proportion of their signage is made on the island, and it's great to be part of that. The stuff that people don't normally notice, that's where the hardest work can be sometimes. The fact that hundreds of thousands of people will look at these signs and never really think about that, but it's a lot of work, and it's good.
You know, I actually don't know where to start with that. There's so much fabulousness in that. Number one, did anyone else do silkscreen printing at school? Did anyone?
Yes, that's what that reminded me of as well.
Oh my goodness, the fun with the squeegee, all that, loved it.
I was also thinking we could get in touch with Mr. George Jack there, the guy who does all the colour, and I could try and get him to make a little old sign in the perfect teal colour. I'm very excited about it. Yes.
That would be so cool. I'd actually really like Hidden London Hangouts in a sign like that to hang in the garden. That'd be so
Oh, that's a good idea.
Wouldn't
I
that
mean,
be
God.
lovely?
So beautiful, the colors there, and like just to see how it changed in color. The red was slightly more orangey, and then it went into that heat, and it came out, and it was like more of that richness of the underground. Wow, it must be such a satisfying job, actually, don't you think? To create something like that is, so completely fundamental to a huge transport network. It must be amazing.
I really liked it, and what I also. Paul, just to say, Paul, you're in that thing. How could you say the Isle of Wight is not about the tube? You've been running the trains for all these decades. What happened there? Paul,
we even did an episode.
Totally. I mean, at the moment, if you go over to the Isle of Wight, if you happen to go over the breaking the law, but you happen to be on the Isle of Wight, there are no trains running because we're between the 1938 stock and the replacement old district line trains that have been sent over there to do the job instead. So it's fascinating. But what a lovely video, Chris. What a beautiful video.
I think it really is tremendous. If you want to see the full version of it, then it's there on the museum's YouTube channel, and was created by some of my colleagues in curatorial. What I love about it is it answers in one short film quite a few of the questions that I've been asked and we've been asked on here down the years about how these signs are made. When we talk about a vitreous enamel, it literally is kind of forming a glass-like surface. And you could see that process of firing it going on. Well, this is one of my own. It's a London Transport enamel.
You show off. Where
sign.
did that come from?
Well, I do know where it came from. It's a lovely 1930s one that I bought at auction. It's actually from, I believe it's Hemel Hempstead bus garage. But if you look at it here, you can see when you see it in the flesh that it's a metal sign, but with that coating. And the reason that they do that is it's not only bright and attractive, but it also means that it protects the metal. You can see where it has kind of worn through it, the metal rusts. You might even see on the back there some of the marks left during the process that we saw going on there with those kind of bed of nails that it's resting on when it's going in to be fired. But I mean, look how well that's done. 1930s, and most of it's still there.
Super shiny.
Absolutely. Having been out there in the elements, and that's because this really is a type of glass. And yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. I've realised I've been holding it upside down all the way through. But it's such a beautiful thing.
All right. You're doing that for our viewers down below, aren't you?
That's right. Yes, down under.
Down
yes,
below.
indeed. Yeah. So yeah, big fan, lovely items, and they really are built to last.
And also, I mean, this is something that you get at the museum sometimes. So we get some of these decommissioned originals, right, Chris? So you get some of those signs that actually come to the museum that have been taken out of action for some reason. And we sometimes sell them, or if we're not accessioning them into the collection, we sell them on to, you know, eager collectors. So why are they decommissioned often? Is there a reason, or?
It's largely when there's a change being made in the signage and that particular sign is no longer relevant, or perhaps like that one, it's just become too badly damaged, but it's still a nice thing. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The museum does sell online, and when we're open at our depot, those things. And indeed, the sign that I use for the ident on the Hidden London Hangouts, the one that's in the title plates, that was a decommissioned original that I bought a few years back, and now have just behind me here for doing the titling. But yeah, lovely things with a long life.
I was going to say, if anyone does want to buy them, you do have to get in extremely quickly before Mr. Nix does make a purchase. Just FYI.
Just love
You're not wrong.
It's so cute as well. He's just such a cutie. His Mrs. Nix must be going mad at this stuff in his house.
Helen she deserves a full sign that says most tolerant wife in the world.
In fairness, she does actually like
enamel,
quite a lot of these things
shiny.
as well. We'll probably now be in the chat room below, either violently agreeing or disagreeing.
A round of applause for Helen Nix.
Totally. And
Quite
you know,
right, quite right,
I'm
yeah.
getting a little bit whimsical as well about, you know, days at school. We used to make coil pots as well, not pots to put coils in, but they were made of little clay worms all the way around. And we used to make clay pots out of coils. Anyone else did that? Anybody?
Oh,
Yeah, I did too.
Yes.
Lovely. Just a little moment of whimsy there. Thank you very much indeed. But these signs are just wonderful. And of course, it's not just the roundels. We had map signs as well. And I know that's for another episode, but you've got to give us one, Chris, just a little teaser as to what we can do on others.
Absolutely, yeah. This particular image, you'll see I've used a few times in different Hangouts because it's just such a cracker. This is an enamel map, which is produced in the same process that we've just seen for the sign. But of course,
how long do you reckon it would take to do that? Because he just said earlier when he does the line diagrams, it can take up to 9 hours. How long would that take?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because you imagine how many screens you have to get all those different colours and lines. And it's just a fabulous bit of work. I'm slightly in love with our enamel maps in the collection just because there's so much detail when you go looking at them. But yeah,
I can see my road there. I'm not going to tell you where it is, but you know.
That's a very detailed map, Siddy.
It's on
there.
there.
Very
Lovely
impressive.
stuff.
That's an excellent way to stalk Siddy, is to go to every road on that map. Good work.
Easily done.
It's all right. Everyone needs a stalker, don't they?
We do not endorse this.
So, in addition to the station names, there's also the arrows, isn't there? Arrows, and we need to talk a little bit about that, don't we, Chris?
Yeah. Before we get to arrows, of course, we start with fingers and hands.
Is there an audition for a finger?
I mean, I did do some very good hand modelling for you the other day. So, I mean,
you did. Did you notice what I did? Took a shot out of the film for the little Instagram picture. By the way, you're following us on Instagram because you really need to. Do it now. But yes, we've got arrows and we've got fingers, haven't we?
We do. So let's take a look at that at the depot.
This is really cool here, isn't it? Because this gives us an idea of how we used to finger point our way around the underground system through time. So literally a finger point there, Chris. Start with that one.
Way out in big shouty caps.
I find the nails really creepy.
At least they're clean.
Yeah, I'm not sure the black nail varnish is doing much for them, but there we go. So yeah, that's how it used to be. You will still see the odd example of that surviving where they're listed or they've survived long enough on the system. But this is what Edward Johnston brought to the party, the Mexican arrow. And you'll see all sorts of variants of this with different flights, but when it was first produced, it was a 4-flight arrow. And the number of flights gradually diminishes over time until the modern day one has none on it at all. You will even see these shot through a bullseye roundel out there on the system as well. So quite a lot of experimentation with that wayfinding, and one of your favourite places.
Kentish Town. How cool is that? Fascinating though with the signs. I absolutely love it. How it's all evolved over time.
Do you know, I have to say, we have so much fun recording this stuff, honestly. And even when we're watching this stuff back, we just giggle all the time. It's great. So on that little montage of films, we've got the fingers and the arrows. So first of all, guys, let's talk about the fingers. How many of us do we think would actually pass the audition to have our hands in shot for these? What do you think? I mean, that's not a bad hand, is it really? What do you reckon, Law?
I don't know, I'll just give it a go there, but I have no idea what that looks like because my screen's too small. I reckon I'll be all right.
I think it'll be very good. Siddy's been a hand model, so what do you reckon, Sid?
Clearly, yeah. I don't know. I feel like I wouldn't do so well with the black nail varnish because I can't do nail varnish, so it might be out.
I've got the cufflinks for it, but I just don't think my fingers and hands are up to snuff. And also years of playing guitar, I think my index fingers are slightly bent. So yeah, I don't think
you say that though, Chris. But you know, whenever I see your hands in shot, they're very dainty. You've got a good finger.
Dainty. Wow.
Dainty.
I've never had my hands called dainty before. I think they're slightly ham-like, but anyway, there we go.
I think they're really nice. I think that as male hands go, they're actually nice hands.
Why,
God, we're going to all get some weird hand complex after this today, guys.
Well,
I'm like looking at
move on to arrows.
What was it? Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
My nan used to say I had piano player's fingers, whatever that means. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I was just turning into Liberace or something. I don't know. But then there's the arrows, isn't there, as well, Chris?
Absolutely. And there we have a couple of lovely old ones with 4 flights.
We've talked about this we've talked about this before. They always change, right? So it's 4 flights, then 3, then 2, then 1, and then 0. What's nice about that, before you start depicting it, is can you see the one that says Highgate Edgware? There's Archway, just zoom.
Look at it.
Look at that. So of course,
cool.
Those who will know, of course, Highgate used to be, so the station called Archway used to be called Highgate until 1941, when Highgate finally opened, and that extension up to Edgware was open. Not even Edgware, High Barnet. It was supposed to go up to Edgware, but never did. So very interesting.
And there's nothing like just sticking a cheap piece of paper sign over the top to correct it. Given how many times it changed its name, it's probably for the best that they did just go with paper rather than redoing the sign.
They have kind of ruined the arrow there a little bit as well, haven't they, unfortunately?
Yeah. But it does answer your earlier question, Laura, about why the signs come up for sale, because it's they change and therefore the old ones come up for sale.
That's a dilemma, though, isn't it, for any kind of team in a museum? What do you do? Scratch off the paper to leave the arrow, or leave the paper on and make people like us go, it's missing a bit?
No, the answer is very simple, is you leave it on, because unless there's a good reason to take it off. So you will see there's a number of signs in our collection, including this one, where the paper is left on just as it was when we took it into the collection, because that's part of its story.
Do you know where this one came from, Chris?
Off the top of my head, I don't. If you give me long enough, I could probably work it out. But my brain's going slowly.
I'm just thinking, so Clapham, Morden, you've got Highgate, Edgware, so it would be somewhere pretty central. Probably,
central,
right?
either branch, I suppose, wouldn't it? It could be either.
Yeah.
But it's beautiful. I love it. Really, really nice. Show us
Going
some more,
south
Chris.
or going north?
Yeah.
Indeed.
Always south.
So the next one is a beautiful one from St.
3
John's.
flights.
So when the Mexican arrows are originally used, the city said the older ones had the 4 flights, and then some people do claim to be able to tell quite precisely what year these signs are made based on the number of arrow flights. But you've got to be careful, because like any rule, they get broken. So generally speaking, you can say the more flights, the older they are. But even though there was official changes in how many flights they should have, it's not exact. So this one, I would guess, is after 1936 because it's got 3 flights, and that's generally when that changed. But you will find exceptions.
It's very nice, though. Very, very nice indeed. Show us another one. I get very greedy, but oh look.
So only 2 arrows.
Charing Cross, Trafalgar Square.
Yes.
Yeah. Very, very nice. But 2 flights. I mean, we are just going down the flights, aren't we?
We are, yes. But interestingly, you get one which is got shot through the bullseye and one that isn't on the same side.
Well, presumably, is that the one that goes to the trains? Has got the round circle, and the one that's taking you out of the station's got. I mean, the detail is what I love about all of this, Chris. And I'm sure, girls, we would agree. Everything about the underground is so beautifully and intricately designed. And the people who do this, even the people now who move little stations a millimetre to the left or the right on the map to make it all fit, I absolutely salute them every time I see it. These are precision products, aren't they?
They really are. The thought that goes into it is really exceptional. It's why they're such lovely things even after their service life. And the fact that you're just walking past these all the time and absorbing that as part of your environment means they have a ring of familiarity to them.
Yeah.
So
it's something that we talked about. Sorry, I was cutting you off there, but it's something that we talk about, how the design of the underground is something that we all take for granted in a certain way. I'm sure many of our viewers have been to a different city or whatnot and found sometimes the subway or the metro system to be kind of confusing because there isn't that kind of crisp clarity to the way the signs are pointing you to where you're going or whatnot. I mean, I remember once getting off the subway in New York and I had to change trains. And this was somewhere in Brooklyn, and I was completely confused because of kind of the contradictory signage that was there. So, I mean, not to put a bad rep on the New York City subway, it's lovely in certain regards, but it's so important. It's something that we often take for granted in London, is that it's all been so clearly and wonderfully thought out for such a long time that it's just part of the furniture.
Do you know what, Sid? I totally agree with you, because we were in New York when we were allowed to go and travel and do these things. And yeah, there are some great things about the New York subway, but I did find it quite difficult to navigate. I didn't find it kind of easy and quick. I did have to digitally kind of look at my phone and look at a map, as well as trying to look at the kind of subway signage as well. So I'm with you on that one.
Always want to pick a fight with the New York Transit.
Oh yeah,
Museum.
No, that's not what
we can pull them apart for that.
I think sometimes it is only once you step out of your own familiar environment in your own city and then step back into it again that you appreciate those things that are all around you and you do take for granted. I think just wandering around our city today, of course, we're used to seeing direction arrows which don't have flights on them at all. And after these 2 flight arrows, there are only a tiny few examples of a single flight arrow, and they do look a bit funny. Even these 2 flight ones look a bit funny. And then they just go to no flights at all, because it's a much cleaner design and everything gradually moves towards cleaner and cleaner design. I have one exception here, which is a bit of an anybody moment for you. So don't forget to leave a pause before you answer. I mentioned about signs about the flight reducing with time, but this one is an example of where the rules have been broken. Does anybody know where this one is from?
Wow. Wow. Is this a place that we have been to before?
It's close to a place that you've been to before.
Oh, okay.
Kind of.
Well, that's completely foxed me, because I thought it was going to be Clapham South.
That's
well,
what
you're
I was
very
going to
close.
say as well, Brandon.
You're very close, both of you.
Clapham
Is it Clapham North?
Clapham Common.
Well done. Laura takes the prize. It's actually the only surviving one was one that we took into our collection about 5 years ago from Clapham Common. And that is now in the Hidden London exhibition. But if you think that was made for the deep level shelters, which of course were built from scratch in response to the Blitz, and they started building them in 1941. They finished them in 1942. So that arrow dates from between 1941 and 1942, and yet it has 4 flights on it.
That is beautiful. And I must just say a big quick shout out to Mako, because you were there in 1990. And it's nice to see the bus boys return. Shame you had to write it down. And hello to the little man in the O of Post as well. That's really rather lovely.
There we go.
Excellent. So, should we have another?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, well, here's an example of where you just have a flightless arrow, but whoa, there's so much more going on with this one, isn't there? This is a line diagram that you would find in a station, which also incorporates signage as well as a line map.
And it's got Aldwych on it. Look, the little Aldwych shuttle. It's
Yeah.
so nice. And British Rail among for King's Cross and Pancras. By the way, did you, the eagle-eyed among you, anybody also see in that film from the Isle of Wight earlier on that there was a roundel that just said King's Cross behind the guy? It wasn't King's Cross St Pancras.
Oh yeah, it was a lit up one, wasn't it?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I thought,
I saw that.
that's quite novel. I'd like that. I'll have a bit of that.
My only question is, Alex, did it have an apostrophe?
Well, exactly. And I'm afraid his back was in the way. But it didn't have a St Pancras either. I thought, this is fascinating. But that's beautiful, isn't it? And of course, the dark blue of the Piccadilly line. So it sort of ages it, doesn't it? And there's a little bit of Victoria line against King's Cross and Green Park. So it's of a certain era. But as you say, Chris, I mean, these, when you see them for sale, they go for a bomb, don't they?
They do. Who wouldn't want that in their house?
Laura, would you like one of those? And what would your husband make that?
Yeah, I was just thinking I was going to contact Mr. Nix and see if he could snaffle me that sign after the show.
I'm afraid that is preserved forever in the collection of London
Oh,
Transport Museum, Laura.
Amazing. It's amazing.
However, signs do get even more beautiful than that. And I've got one here, which I think is one of the sort of the pinnacles of everything coming together as a piece of art and furniture and wayfinding in one. So how about that?
Oh, God, look at that. Brass. Is it brass?
Bronze. Even more posh.
Oh, that would be lovely. Can you imagine that as a bedside lamp?
It'd be a bit big.
That's all right.
How big's your bed?
Can you imagine trying to turn that off? You just finish the book for the night. You're like, ugh.
You'd have planes trying to land.
That's amazing. That is beautiful. I love it, Mr. Nix. Love it.
It's a lovely example of a lit piece of signage, which could in itself be a whole episode. So you've got the bullseye, you've got the bronze work, and you've got it lit up to make it really shout about itself. And then the final image we've got is just one more, which is a very common sight on our underground where we preserve our heritage. And that is where you get the old and the new together.
Oh, yeah.
Look at that. So the days when the Piccadilly line went,
there.
Isn't it? So when the Piccadilly line went from Finsbury Park to Hammersmith, and that was it. It's so lovely. And there's something really comforting about that photograph. Not least of all because it shows that you can go out and see these things, and it's not just from our lounges that we seem to live in these days, but also that old and new can just coexist together like that on the tube. I think there's something quite poignant about that, Chris.
Well, that was really the pivotal moment in 1994 when the Underground did an audit of all of its kind of heritage assets. And they made the conscious decision that where it didn't cause confusion, you would let the old and the new happily coexist, and to preserve and celebrate those beautiful bits of heritage. And that's why we have a hobby, I guess, in Hidden London, because we're able to go and find and celebrate these surviving things of beauty out on the system and enjoy them.
Right, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for that lovely little canter through some of the images. But of course, you said it about it before. I mean, there have been times I've been on the Costa Brava, and I've been quite shocked.
Oh, wow.
Not Magaluf.
So, you did say Magaluf, didn't you? It's got another name as well. But there have been times where, you're looking along, searching for your full English breakfast in Spain, and you see the roundel in some very, very curious locations. And of course, they're all kind of contradictory and in contravention to everything that the system stands for. They're probably even illegal. Chris, there's got to be examples of where roundel goes wrong, aren't there?
There are. We have to, of course, officially disapprove, but we do also collect examples of them for the collection. So these are ones which have been successfully challenged and removed. And I have a particularly striking one for you to share.
From Tokyo.
Oh, really?
So get a load of that.
Wow.
Awesome.
There we go. Last week it was Bovril Station. This week you're just going to alight at Sexy Dynamite.
Do you know what, Alex?
I really want a station to be called that in London now.
Can you imagine?
Which one? That's the question. And also, if we hadn't have had the Hidden London Roundel produced, then we might have just used that one for us.
It's got to be
Totally.
It's got to be
On brand.
Kentish Town. There was a lot of Sexy Dynamite, I can tell you. It was good stuff there.
Well, guys, if we had to, maybe this one's for Patreon later on, but if we had to, what station would be Sexy Dynamite?
Well, I know what I would choose. I know what I would choose, definitely. Gorgeous misuse of the roundel. Well done, Tokyo.
It also occurred to me, I have no idea what product that was advertising at the time, so we should probably move on. To our next one, which is another kind of oddball one, really. It's very easy, I think, to tell when the roundel hasn't quite been done right, and that's certainly true here. But where is this, do you think?
Well, I think I know, so I'm going to throw my hat into the ring immediately.
Is it Aldwych?
Well done. Our
Yeah.
Aldwych Queen has spoken.
Yeah, Aldwych Queen. I love that. Aldwych Queen.
And so why is it in Aldwych, do we think?
Presumably for filming, was it?
Yes.
It was, yeah. So it was for filming of, what was that show called again? Oh, God, I literally had it in my head. And
Whitechapel?
No, it's called Pennyweather or Pennyfeather. Pennyfeather? It's
Penny
about...
Farthing.
No, it's about young Alfred, as in the butler of Batman, in his crime-fighting days in London in like the 70s or something. Oh God, what's it called?
I think we might have just had an insight into what the four of us are going to be like in a retirement home when we're all done here. Oh, Miss Pennyfeather.
Penny, is it Penny? Penny?
Do you know what? As long as we're all in the same one, I'll be happy.
Can you imagine? All queuing up for our jabs together. Can you imagine? For coronavirus 16.
Pennyworth! It's Pennyworth.
Oh, we got there eventually.
Excellent.
Nurse, get her a jab. Well done.
So, well done. We got there in the end. And so let's have a look at another one here, because this is a real curiosity. When Siddy and I were trawling through images, we found this and thought it was a beauty.
But
puzzle that one out.
Well, but this is weird because with the City and South London Railway, what I thought that the roundel and the typeface came in when the City and South London Railway had been renamed the Northern Line.
Correct.
It had,
so
yeah.
Why and how and why and how and why and how?
Well, the clue's in the bottom bit, the social club.
So it's a drunkard's.
So, well, although the City and South London Railway had ceased to exist as a company, there was clearly a social group which survived from that era that carried on through at least to 1933 when London Transport was created.
Yeah. So it sort of seems like, you know, this is probably the old motormen or whatnot of City and South London just kind of refusing to, you know, let the name go or whatnot. But of course, the Northern Line wasn't called the Northern Line until 1937. Am I right in that? So it was called, yeah, so it was called a mixture of names for a while, and it was called, you know, amongst others, the City and South, at least that part of it. So maybe that's why.
And a bit like the old drivers after a night out on the pop. The great thing is the drivers were like the trains. They had to go 2 by 2 to get up the hill.
Yeah, well, quite probably.
And speaking of a night out, sometimes the staff have to have signage made for them and also for people on their way home in case their behaviour becomes unacceptable. So here's a really unusual one, very specific, about gambling not being permitted.
Wow, where's that from?
It's not one of our nights out, Law. We wouldn't do that. Wasting gambling time drinking or drinking time gambling. Crikey.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't do that.
That's amazing. Good work. Good work. Well, that's a really nice little canter through science. I must admit, when we said we were going to do science, I thought, what are we going to talk about? But actually, there's loads to go at. And I have to say, I do quite like the idea of an illuminated science special. Not least of all, because I just love the idea of Chris Licks going around changing the bulbs before we film it. That'd be really cool. Love it. Love it. Okay, so notes, queries and questions then. As always, if you send us stuff, we love to hear from you. It makes our day, makes it all worthwhile, actually. And we had a few come in. Mark Smith says, I know everyone else has already done this, but please send on my thanks to the rest of the team for what you're all doing, taking the time out of your lives to put this together. It's amazing how something you saw as a little project has really taken off, certainly has, takes up so much time in our week. And it's really caught the imagination of the public and blossomed into something massive. It's totally fantastic. So massive pats on the backs, long may it continue. So thank you very much for that. It really means a lot that when we get these little bits of information from you, and thank you. Martini says, I love you guys on the Hidden London Hangouts. We love you too, Martini. Especially as the real Martini as well. Highlight of the week. I've always loved the Underground for donkey's years for many reasons, the design, the history, the vehicles, and you guys just open it up with amazing information. Thank you so much. And do you remember last week, Chris? Do you remember 5Jamer was the person who inspired us to do the episode on Lords?
Yes, I do.
Well, 5Jamer got in touch. And he said, I can't thank you enough for today's programme on Lords. It was, now you would say this, 5Jamer, it was by far and away the best. That's because it was dedicated to you. And I'm thanking you all so much. He said, I spent my life living round Willesden Green, and at the bottom of our garden ran the Bakerloo and the Metropolitan line with old wooden carriages. The stations and the line to Baker Street hold a really special place for me. So I'm really, really glad that we were able to bring that to life for you. And we had an email as well. I love email. And I also love it when people are precise with their typing. And I know, because this guy, Chris, thank you so much, Chris, for writing to us. He did email with a dash, e-mail. I love that. It says, just found your Hidden London Hangouts on YouTube, and I just wanted to congratulate you on them. It's wonderful that you're bringing so many aspects of London transport design to life. We do try, and in such a fun way. I'm not on social media, which is why I'm sending you this message by e-mail, and I love your precision. Not one typo in this, by the way. I've got a small collection of London Underground material, including a copy of the large format London's handwriting book in its clam case, a large station roundel from Whitechapel, and a hinged cube like a puff, I presume. Is that right? Like a puff that you sit on? Of Waterloo and City Line moquette with matching cushions. So good for you. You're among friends here. We've got loads of it ourselves. It's all good. Thank you, as always, for watching. And thank you very much, Chris, for just being fab with your signs that you whip out from under the table.
Thank you, Alex. And yeah, it's been really interesting to go through this one. And if people have enjoyed it and they want to see some more, then we'll see you over on Patreon for some extra content there.
Tell us very briefly, by the way, Chris, because we've been really delighted by the take-up on Patreon so quickly as well. It's like, it's something for only fans, isn't it, really?
It is, yeah, and we've had a great take-up actually from last week's episode. People who we've been used to seeing in the chat room in YouTube joining us there for some extra slices of content, and also to support us in what we do. So, yep, we've just started, but it's a good start.
Good stuff indeed. And immediately after this, we do our own Patreon version of this. So this is special good stuff. Siddy, thank you very much indeed, as always, for being so wonderful.
Thank you very much. I've actually really enjoyed today's show. Not that I don't always, but I think it's an underrated topic, signs. It's one that, we see all around us, but maybe do not notice as much. So thank you.
Totally. Oh, it's drudgery sometimes, these episodes. Oh, it's hard work. We love it every week. This is like the highlight of our week, because our weeks are as rubbish as yours. And Laura, as always, my darling, thank you so much. And let's see if we can silk screen print you a Teely-Tiley sometime.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that. I do have one question for you all, though. Do you remember what colour the London 2012 signage was?
Anybody?
Do you
Absolutely.
remember?
I do, but I'm now gonna be scared that I'm gonna say it and it's wrong.
Are we talking its proper name?
No,
I mean, I can go
just
with a crude
generally,
colour.
the general colour.
Well, I was gonna say magenta.
Oh, but
correct.
that's
Get you.
perfect.
Ah,
The
And I'm
reason
now
why-
kicking myself because I meant to go and get the one that I have in for this episode and entirely forgot. So maybe in future.
Oh, that's a shame. But the reason I wanted to ask was because I just thought it kind of summed up what we've been talking about today in terms of kind of the hidden design elements that just cause that familiarity and identification. And I was reading an article about the London 2012 Olympics and how pink very early on in the design process became the colour that they wanted to use. And their mantra kind of then became, look for pink, find the sign. And that kind of apparently just swelled throughout the whole of the design process. And I just wondered if anyone would remember that it was pink, because it's a fair few years ago now. So.
And sidebar on that, the reason that they chose magenta for that is they went through every colour palette in TfL's already used colours and in the streetscape, and the only colour that nobody had used there before was magenta. So it was the only one that would stand out. It's genius.
What a lovely choice too. But there we go.
I was just thinking to myself, it's the watchword of my life, really, isn't it? Look for pink, pretend you're butch. That's the way I've done it for 43 years. What you need to do is find us on Instagram. So it's Alex Grunden, Chris Nix, City Holloway and Hidden London Law, and tip the LT Museum a wink as well. And also on YouTube, you're watching us on YouTube, but don't forget below to like, comment and subscribe to all of them, and you'll be told first before anybody else that a new episode is ready to watch. And don't forget Patreon, and we'll be back next week with a really, really cool subject. I hope you're enjoying Series 3. We're loving doing it for you. Have yourself a great day and stay safe.